Juno Award-Winning harpist Angela Schwarzkopf concertizes throughout the Toronto area and beyond as a soloist, chamber musician, and orchestral harpist. The first harpist to receive a doctorate of music in harp performance in Canada, she now teaches at a number of esteemed institutions and performs with top ensembles nationwide. She's also a founding member of the Topaz Duo with flutist Kaylee Maymitz. Angela has worked on commissioning projects with many prominent composers. Her debut album, Detach, of all Canadian new music, won a 2020 Juno Award for Classical Album of the Year, solo or chamber. Detach features several new Canadian commissions by composers Monica Pearce, Alicia Denberg, Kevin Lau, and Mark Nerenberg. And now my interview with harpist Angela Schwarzkopf. Thank you so much for joining me today, Angela. I do appreciate you meeting me here on Zoom to talk about your album and some of your recent projects. First things, I just wanted to ask you about your background with the harp. When you started playing the harp, whether that was your first instrument or did you have a background in piano or voice? I'm always curious because the harp is such a beautiful and unique instrument, and curious as to how people find their way into playing and discovering it.
Totally. Yeah. I grew up with a piano in my home. And so I watched both my siblings start piano lessons and then stop piano lessons. And I wanted to take piano lessons. And my parents were weary just because my siblings had kind of started and stopped. So I think they waited about a year of me asking for lessons before they were like, okay, she seems like she really wants to take piano lessons. So I was 8 years old when I started piano. And then I think it was around when I was about 10 that my parents said, if you want to play another instrument, you're welcome to. And they were at that time taking me to symphony concerts. And I was seeing all the different instruments. And I was really interested in the harp, which, you know, obviously I'd not had a lot of chances to interact with other than seeing it on the stage. And I was also really interested in the cello. And I think I was interested in the cello because one of my friends played the cello. But my parents are really smart. They set me up with people that they knew or connections they had to go and try the cello and to try the harp. And I think because the harp initially is so similar to the piano, just in the way the strings are laid out, it's very clear what the scale is. And that the music looks the same with the treble clef to the bass clef. When I tried the cello, I couldn't really understand like where the notes were. It didn't make any sense to me. So immediately I was like, yes, I want to play the harp. I could play a song on it. I know how it works. It makes sense to me. So they started me off with harp lessons at age 10 and kind of went from there. I took voice lessons for a few years in there as well, sang in choirs, all that good stuff. But then when it came time for university, I I dropped everything else and I focused just in on the harp.
Growing up and as you were experiencing and discovering a lot of the repertoire for the harp, was there a particular era of writing that you were drawn to for solo harp, or is the emphasis more on ensemble playing? I'm curious at what point you started discovering the solo repertoire for your instrument.
Right away, my focus was on solo harp repertoire, chamber music, and orchestral music because my parents had enrolled me in I grew up in Ottawa. And so I was in the Ottawa Junior Youth Orchestra and then the Ottawa Youth Orchestra. So I was in this Ottawa Orchestra Academy. So I had lots of opportunities for ensemble work as well. But in terms of solo playing, I would say right off the bat, I was always very drawn to like French impressionistic music. Felt very connected with it. And so a lot of the repertoire that I wanted to play was that. I think it wasn't probably until I was in my undergrad that I started to experience new music, and just like, a lot of the big standards, I was in a new music ensemble and we did in C and we did, 4 minutes and 33 seconds, stuff like that. And I started to be like, wow, new music's cool. But I don't think I started to really like. I worked a little bit with maybe one or two composers in my undergrad, but I think it was maybe in my master's that I started to really dive into it. But I like truly felt very connected still to the more traditional harp repertoire through so much of my educational training. And I actually wrote my doctoral dissertation on a French impressionistic harpist composer. But now it feels like these days my focus is very much like turn the corner.
Yeah,
I'm in a
yeah.
different direction.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Normally, would you find yourself playing kind of more traditional repertoire, or most of your work involving working with composers and commissioning works and more in the new music milieu? I'm wondering.
It is a huge mix. It's sort of, I guess, a lot of my orchestral works tends to be traditional music. However, I do get called to play with Esprit Orchestra, and they are all new music, so I get a lot of opportunities there. And even this past season, I was supposed to be doing some concerts with the National Arts Centre Orchestra in Ottawa, and it was new music I was playing with them, which I was really excited about. I love working on new music that no one else has played or barely anyone has played. Um, but yeah, in terms of solo repertoire, right now I seem to be just really on my own, just focusing on the commissioning and performing and working with composer collectives and educating people on playing how to write for the harp.
Yeah, exactly. Actually, that was my next question, Angela, was when you're writing for the harp, although the harp is, as you mentioned, a traditional orchestral instrument, and I take it is part of orchestration class for composers in training, but it has its idiosyncrasies, as we know. It's not, unless you have some intimate knowledge and perhaps you're, in touch with the performer, it may be difficult to know the ins and outs of the harp and how to use the instrument most effectively. When you're commissioning pieces with composers, do you find yourself working really directly hands-on in kind of workshopping, revising drafts, making suggestions, for example, to things that might sit better on your instrument?
Absolutely. I feel like in a lot of ways, I mean, they're the ones doing the huge amount of work of writing it, but I do kind of feel like we're a team in the delivery of this piece to the world. So yes, I think I work quite closely with the composers. It kind of depends on their experience level or understanding of writing for the harp. Often they'll send me emails or little drafts or ask me questions in the writing process, like, is this possible? Can you do this? Is this weird? What's a better way to notate this? And then when I get the full draft, I'll go through and I'll be like, this is not possible, or maybe this is an alternative way we could do this, or make this more playable, or like feel more comfortable in the hands. So there is quite a bit of back and forth. A couple of the pieces on my album specifically came from collaborations I did with new music collectives. So that was really truly meant to be sort of an educational opportunity where I was showing them how the harp works, how to write for the harp. They were writing for me. I was performing the pieces. It was much more of a collaborative process.
And I wanted to talk a little bit about your selection of works for this album, Angela. I know I read a little bit about it and I listened to it. First of all, beautiful compositions and performances by yourself and your collaborators. Really enjoyed the works with vibraphone and was really delighted to hear just the timbral blend of the two instruments and the use of them in the compositions were really, really creative and really beautiful. So I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit about your selection of these works. And I know that you commissioned some of them. Were all of them commissioned, or were there some pre-existing repertoire pieces that you drew from for the selection of the pieces?
Yeah, great question. I mean, this project started without me even knowing it back in 2009. The very first piece, Contemplation by Mark Nerenberg, was written at that time. And it was actually a surprise. It was a gift from my parents to me as congratulations on completing your master's degree. And they were very sneaky about it. I had talked about another piece I'd worked on with Mark and how much I liked his writing style. And so they very, very sneakily commissioned a piece by him for me. And that was amazing. And then after that, when I finished my doctorate, my parents offered to do the same thing, but this time let me in a little bit on the process. And I had asked to work with Kevin Lau for that one. I played some of his orchestral works at that time, and I knew that I really enjoyed his writing style, that he wrote really well for the harp. So those two pieces in particular were commissioned by my parents, Jane and Tom Schwarzkopf, great supporters of Canadian new music. And then the other pieces, I did commission some of them. So Monica Pearce wrote Detach for me as a part of a collaboration I did with the toy piano composers. And it was always meant to have a companion. So we together applied for a grant from the American Harp Society, and I was able to commission her to write Detach, which is the companion piece and the title track of the album. And then I did kind of a similar thing. Alicia Denberg had wrote this little sonatina, a little 5-minute work for harp and vibraphone. And it was originally written for Sonia Ng and Ryan Scott, another harp percussion marriage duo that exists in Toronto. They're wonderful, amazing performers. And the piece had been written for them. They had played it in a workshop scenario. And Etienne and I came across it. Etienne's my husband, sorry, I should have said that, and the performer of that piece with me. We came across it and we loved it. And we thought it was so great, and we performed it a couple times, and we just thought it needed more. There needed to be more of it. And Alicia had said he'd always thought maybe he would write more for it. So again, that was an opportunity for me to get a grant from the American Harp Society, and we commissioned the 2 outside movements of that piece. So the actual middle movement is the only piece on the album that wasn't written for me. And then I think the last 2 pieces, Garden, my dear friend Michelle Colton, also a vibraphonist, had asked Cecilia Livingston to write that piece for us so that she could perform it on a recital during her doctorate. We loved the piece. We performed it many times. So it just made sense for it to be a part of this project. And the last piece was like, I think the album, the concept for the album had already been formed in my mind that I wanted to do this, and I wanted to include all these pieces. I played a lot of other new music pieces, but these were the ones I was like, I want to be on this. And then I did a collaboration with Caution Tape Sound Collective. And this composer, Patrick Ardiaga, wrote me this piece, Portrait of Shamu. And it was just so stunning and so amazing that I had to include it. So his piece was the last one to sneak into this very long album, 70 minutes.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I didn't formally commission it, but it was written for me.
And I ask because it seems like there's a very cohesive stylistic or kind of a sound, a world, a timbral sort of element to the works, and there's a nice flow through the album. And I thought the works and the selection and the sequence of works was really, really unified.
Oh, great.
Regarding the vibraphone and harp pieces, Angela, I'm wondering, is that a typical pairing, harp and vibraphone? Is there a pre-existing repertoire to draw from other than these newer pieces? Because it really is a very effective blend of instruments.
Yeah, that's great. I don't think there's so much that's been written for it. I mean, we came across Alicia's piece because we were trying to find something that we could play together. And we thought that the vibraphone and harp sounded really great together. And I think a few other people had written things here or there. I know that there's certainly more repertoire now being expanded for it. We have a good friend, another percussion harp friend couple in the States that is their thing. They do harp and vibraphone and they are, arranging and commissioning. So I think there's definitely more and more music coming out for that, but not a huge amount. It's not a very traditional combination.
So regarding the Junos this year, Angela, I know I was reading up a little bit also about the Junos that were scheduled to take place in Saskatoon, but of course were canceled, and I think for the first time since 1988. But fortunately that they went through with the process, the award ceremony online. Is that right?
Yeah, it was so bizarre, really. I mean, you go from this high energy and build up to the live event, and then it felt very anticlimactic, but also really exciting to find out who the winners are going to be. And so they just ended up doing it as a live event they streamed it through Jam and Facebook and YouTube. So it had like a set time that it was coming out, and they'd kind of told us ahead of time, the day of, they told us what order they were announcing the categories in. I knew I was 4th last, so that was fantastic for my nerves. We had been told little things like they said, Jackson Triggs was going to sponsor it, and they were going to send us all a bottle of bubbly, which was fantastic. So we all got a bottle of bubbly to enjoy at home. And
nice.
They had said, yeah, it was nice. And like they had said that after the award ceremony that we would be, if you won, you were to record your acceptance speech and submit it at a later date. So we kind of had a little bit of information, but the idea was that you would watch from home. They encourage you to connect with your fans. I mean, my fans are my friends and family, so
Yeah, yeah. Oh,
so I just watched it with my husband in our apartment at home. Like I said, I was totally full of nerves and just really stressed out. And so I thought about, maybe trying to like have a Zoom party on the side with some friends and family. And I was like, I can't do it. I just need to watch it by myself at this point.
yeah, yeah. I understand. Did they send you the trophy yet? Do you have a spot in your place where designated it's just for the statue, or is it in the mail?
It's in the mail.
In the mail, yeah.
I'm waiting. I feel like it still doesn't actually feel so real. Like after they said my name, I lost it. Like I totally started screaming and
Yeah,
crying,
yeah.
and then I stopped and I was like, did they actually say my name? They did say my name, right? And Etienne was like, yeah, 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 they said your name. But I like did not hear the rest of the entire Juno Award ceremony. And then it didn't totally feel real though, because I wasn't I wasn't there in person,
Yeah.
and I don't have the statue. I feel like
Yes.
maybe when the statue comes it'll feel more real, but it still feels very like, oh, that happened. That's a
Yeah.
thing.
Well, it must be just a great boost and very inspiring, hopefully, for you to kind of perhaps plan the next series of recordings or commissioning projects. And I'm wondering what you are currently working on, Angela, and if you have any future recording plans as a follow up or a batch of commissions or anything else you have going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, so I feel a little overwhelmed with the idea of starting another project, because when I think about this one, it really started. The first piece was 2009, and the last piece was 2017, and I didn't get the album, out to the world until 2019 November. So really, the album hasn't been out that long, and I guess I thought at this point I would be, like performing the pieces and trying to sell my CDs more in person, and
Yeah.
um, I have done a couple live streams online since the pandemic started, so I've made sure to play play music for my album and try to promote the album and the composers and their music, because really that to me is the most important thing about creating the album, is to get that music out there
Yeah.
and you know share it with the world, because I think it's great.
Yeah.
And
No,
I hope
definitely.
other people like it too, and I hope other people want to play it, and it gets that place in our music literature. So I think I had not really thought about starting another project quite so right away, but I think now we have a unique opportunity of time that I could get it underway, and I'd like to think that I would be faster this time around. And I mean, it was very nice. My recording engineer, Pete Gemmell, was like very patient and kind and let me take my time with the recording. So it was done over quite a long period of time. We had a few different recording sessions over a period of years. And then he was also very patient with the editing process, but I would drag my feet a lot. I was terrible because I have a really hard time listening to myself. That I found to be really hard. Maybe going through it once now, the next time around I'll be better. I think I mentioned specifically Detach because I think it's so orally interesting. It's not
Hmm.
what you expect the harp to sound like. And I think that's a good thing, that it kind of opens some doors. Yeah, I think it's just a really, really interesting piece. And it was actually the piece that I was most worried about recording, and that I feel like a lot of the gestures of what we do at the harp are so visual when we do these extended harp techniques, that I was worried that they wouldn't record in quite the same way without the visual. And I spent a bit of time actually with my lifelong mentor, Judy Lohman, just playing around with how to get the best sound on those techniques for a recording versus what you could do in a live performance would be a little bit different than what you would do for a recording. And so I think that the way that those ended up getting recorded in sound are really cool, and I really am happy with how well they translated in the recording themselves. And it's awesome to hear that they don't need the visual attached to it for it to really stand well together.
Detach. Was there a meaning to the title of the work that is either expressed in the piece, or is there a story behind the title?
There are program notes that go with all the pieces, and Detach Oh, it's so beautiful. So, Detach is about blowing a kiss goodbye to a set of plans, skipping a rock over still water, and trying to find a light switch in an unfamiliar room.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's very
Beautiful.
descriptive. It's really beautiful. I think it fits really beautifully with the piece. I picked Detach as the title track because I like just the many layers that that word represents. And I felt like it accurately reflected this project because I was, in my mind, detaching from these normal conventions or ideas of what the harp sounds like and can do. And that, I was bringing this sort of very diverse program of new music. And I just felt that that word best represented everything that I was doing. And I really wanted the title of the album to be off of one of the songs. And I just felt that best reflected the overall work.
That's a great, yeah, really, really great title, and also great layout and design. And I wanted to ask about the painting. I noticed Laura Schwarzkopf original art. I'm assuming it's a family member. Can you tell us a little bit about the painting and yeah, and the design?
So that's my sister. She did the artwork. Actually, it was more that I used an existing artwork, and maybe I shouldn't be telling this secret, but it was more that I really wanted to feature her artwork on my album. I really like her style. I think it's really beautiful. I love her use of colors, and so my sister she's a school teacher as well. She's an art school teacher, and so she was in the thick of school and things were really busy, and I kind of said, Mom, just go over there and take pictures of her work, but like get up close so that it's like even more kind of abstract, and just get right in there, because
Oh,
sometimes her pictures will have like a butterfly on them, or it'll have a skull or something like that. And so I sort of said, like, get up close, get a really colorful section. And because my sister and my mom, they all live in Ottawa, and so I was like, Mom, you just got to go over there, go around the house, take a bunch of pictures, a bunch of different pieces of her artwork. And then I kind of skimmed through them and picked my favorite close up, and then I sent that to my guy who did the layout, and he did wonderful things with it. Yeah, it was pretty cool, and I was really glad to include my sister in the project because she's such a creative person, and she's so colorful and so supportive and inspiring, and I just really wanted her to be a part of this project.
well, I want to thank you, Angela, for joining me today and sharing your time with me. Really, really great to hear the story of both your background as a harpist and your inspiration for this beautiful album. And again, congratulations. We're all very proud of you here on the West Coast. And it's the second Juno, I believe, on the Redshift Records catalog. So great to talk to you and meet you, hopefully someday in person. And thanks again, and all the best with your future projects. And do keep in touch.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me today. It was
Yeah,
great to
thanks,
chat.
Angela. Visit angelaschwarzkopf.com for more information on the performer and to support her projects. We leave you today with 3 tracks from Angela's album: Attach and Detach by Monica Pearce, as well as Contemplation by Mark Nerenberg. Until next time, thanks for listening.